but talk about your pain. Can't appreciate the sun without acknowledging it rains, right? That's right. So this a moment of clarity. And make sure you always protect your energy. You stay focused and your life gon' be lit. And you are now rocking with Celeste, the therapist. Let's go.
All right. Hi. Let me get on the screen. Hi, beautiful people. If you're watching me on the replay, thank you so much for watching me. I just want to make sure I'm logged in here. And okay, I am. All right. So if you're watching me on the replay, thank you so much for watching me. I appreciate you. Let me get set up because, you know, I'm not always set up properly. So yeah, my name is Celeste. I'm a therapist. Hey, Donald. Excuse me. And I come on Wednesdays to talk about things. Hey, how are you, Crystal? To talk about things that we go through, and hey, P-Love, and think about ways that we can work through it. My goal behind this is to help you shift the way you think. So these episodes are also uploaded on my podcast. So if you're like an audio podcast person, this is a pretty cool way to like go to work, especially if there's traffic, to kind of get a little dose of medicine. I like to think about what I do as giving doses of medicine on how to live life because a lot of us get really stuck. And so today, that's what we're talking about. Actually, we're talking about this mental cage that so many people find themselves in and unclear how to get out. So when I think about a mental cage, I think about the fact that when we were born, we were a blank slate, right? We were babies. Over time, things happened, right? Whether they was explicitly where you can easily identify them. There's some people they can identify, yep, that was abuse, or that happened, that caused X, Y, and Z. Some people are able to identify it very clearly. There are other things that you may not be able to identify clear. There's people, when I work with them, and they'll say, well, you know, I was never hit, never talked down to, certain things. Like it seemed like things were fine on the surface, but then maybe outside of the home, or maybe when things happen, some of your self-dialogue about the situation starts to change, right? A lot of times we don't realize that some of the way that we're framing things can cause our mind to start thinking of the fact that maybe we can't do certain things. A lot of our limiting beliefs are brought on by circumstances, but they're also brought on by the way we're framing things. I just want to make sure I'm on the mic really quick. And I am not, because when I edit this, and it's not, okay, I'm on the mic now. So some of the things that we struggle with in the way that we think about things is because of how we frame it. And a lot of us haven't been taught, how do I process this thing that just happened? You know, sometimes something happens at school and you get home and you don't really think about it, but guess what? The experience is still there. Just because that thing that happened long ago is no longer happening doesn't mean that your body hasn't calculated it. Like your mind, this is the amazing thing about the mind, right? It does what it's supposed to do, as crazy as it may sound. When something happens, let's say the teacher embarrassed you and you didn't do well on a test, and called you out. And maybe it wasn't intentional, but maybe you felt embarrassed by it, right? And you start to think that, like, maybe I'm not a good test taker, right? Because I didn't do well on this particular test. And then you start to believe that you're not able to do certain things because of that experience. It could have been the way the teacher taught. It could have been maybe you have a learning disability that was never tapped into, right? And so you grow up starting to think that you're not capable of certain things, but maybe if you had the right supports, it would look differently. And so you're not realizing that that incident that happened where you felt embarrassed by the situation, how it sits in your spirit and sits in your mind. So what is your mind going to do? It's going to help you. So, hey, you're about to take a test again. We're not really good at that, right? It's not going to go well. And so we start to feel anxious about taking a test. Literally, that's what happens to the mind. So a lot of these experiences that you may say, but that was 20 years ago, that was 10 years ago. Please understand that regardless of how long something happened, it can still affect you greatly. You'll be surprised, even some of the smallest things that you may not even think of is happening because your mind has that experience. So when we start to think that we can separate from what's happened, when we try to numb some of the things through work, through relationships, through having more kids, through trying to find somebody that will love us, when we start to like mitigate, or we think we can mitigate some of the pain by some of the things that we're doing, it doesn't work. You can never change your experience. Your experience is your experience. And so a lot of those limiting beliefs, unfortunately, starts to affect your self-esteem, your confidence, and how do you move forward and get out of your comfort zone when that's happening. So I want to show you a diagram, and then I want to talk about, because I think people understand that what mental cage is. I think people understand that when they really think about it, some of the ways that they're thinking about things is holding them back, right? So we're going to talk about solutions, like how can we work on changing that? Because when you think about an actual cage, right? An actual cage, it's really hard to get out of like a metal cage, right? And so when I think about the mental cage, it's not, we can literally like walk out of it, but we need the right tools to do that, right? The same thing with a metal cage. You need the right tools to cut through. Without the tools, you won't be able to do that. But with the mental cage, I'm going to help you think about the tools that you need to be able to break free from what you're experiencing mentally. So when you look at this diagram, the comfort zone where you feel safe and in control, you know, it's going to take some time to get to the growth zone. But in order to do that, like this next step, right, you're affected by others' opinions. This is the fear zone, right? And then this part about finding excuses, you know, that's the mind is amazing. And it's easy for us to give ourselves excuses not to do something. We can try to become a little bit comfortable with not going for that promotion. We can become a little bit more comfortable with like not healing in the way that we want to heal, because we start to give ourselves reasons why it can't happen. Let's just think about like weight loss, or working out or moving your body. We can say, well, I can't afford a gym, so I'm not going to be able to lose weight, right? And so that zone right here where we're finding excuses. And if you've been following me for a while, I'm big on like, yeah, you don't have money for a gym, but what can you do, right? You can walk in your neighborhood. So one of the things that I do is I help people get out of the habit of looking at excuses as a reason why they can't do something. Acknowledge the barrier, but also look at what you can do, right? So this fear zone and finding excuses, unfortunately, is very common. And then the self-confidence you struggle with. And then we move into the learning zone, dealing with new challenges and problems, gaining new skills and experiences, and expanding your comfort zone. Being able to do that will get you into this blue area right here. For people that are listening on the audio, I have a visual up. Achieving objectives, you start to set new goals, finding your purpose, making your dreams a reality, self-confidence and belief. And I know people want to skip to here really quick, but it's gonna take some stuff to get there. On Instagram, Sophia says some of us don't know we are in a cage. That is so true. You know, that's actually, you're 100% right. Some people don't even realize that they're holding themselves back, because a lot of times we'll look at it, well, it's because of this thing that happened 10 years ago is why I can't do this thing. And I'm here to tell you that that's not true. It may feel like it. It may feel like because your parents weren't around. It may feel like because you experienced abuse growing up that you're not able or capable of doing certain things. The feeling may feel there, but what do we know about feelings is that feelings change. Feelings do not stay the same. And so my goal, and like when I'm talking about these things, is to help you acknowledge the feeling, because I get it. They're real feelings you're experiencing, but not allow that feeling to stop you from pushing forward. The reason why it feels that way is because, remember, the mind doesn't have concept of time. And so any feeling that comes up that mimics some of the past experiences, some of the past trauma, some of the past abuse, some of the past experiences, anything that mimics it, the fear starts to set in because you feel like you're back there. And so your mind wants to protect you. And so you have to engage with your thoughts. Right. And that's why I'm big on like making sure you understand, like you can choose to or not engaging your thoughts, but they're going to still happen. And those are the reasons why you might find yourself feeling stuck. So let's go into like solutions. Like, what does me getting out of this zone, what is that going to look like? So first, identifying the cage, right? So in these moments, your interactions with people, with yourself, consider if you're misinterpreting signals from others or if you're allowing a situation to drain you. A lot of times we do misinterpret situations from others. You know why? Because that's our mind trying to protect us, right? So let's say I'm always thinking, when you have a negative thought process pattern where maybe the day went good, but then somebody cut you off, right? And so now you're only thinking about, oh my gosh, I can't believe they cut me off. Or another example is you had an interaction at work that was negative, and then after work, you're calling your coworker about it, you're talking about it, you're getting yourself riled up. Besides that interaction at work, everything else was fine. You are literally training your brain to commiserate and complain and feel down about work. That's what happens, right? And so sometimes you're misinterpreting your life based off of only looking at the negative things and not bringing in the positive to your life. So in that scenario that I just gave, when you think about it, you're actually allowing a situation to drain you because now you're at home. And let's say that it was your boss that you had that interaction with. Your boss is at home eating dinner with their family while you are feeling miserable about the thing that happened at work, right? So just be mindful of that, is to ask yourself, is this something that I'm allowing to drain me? Am I misinterpreting it? You know, just because somebody text and put an exclamation mark, does that mean that they're mad at me? Right? Stop telling yourself stories about things. A lot of times when you don't have the information, you don't realize it, but you start filling in the blank with stories that aren't true. Right? So asking yourself, like, where is the evidence, is something that's important to do. The next thing I want you to think about is taking responsibility. So asking yourself why you did something, what could have been done differently, and then take responsibility for your actions. This is hard to do. Let's say you've been harmed. Let's say your friend, you realize your friend screams at you or takes advantage of you, or they're always asking you to be the person that drives, right? Let's just use that example. You can sit there and say, like, why are they always asking me to drive? Like, why do they only ask me? Because you always say yes, right? But you're thinking like, I would actually switch up. I wouldn't make my friend drive all the time. But they're not you, right? And so yeah, it does suck that they're not taking your like needs into consideration. Or why do they always ask me to watch their kids? And then you feel bad for saying no, so you say yes all the time. When you think about those scenarios, you have to take responsibility for what you allow, right? And it's not that you did anything wrong, but when you start taking responsibility on what you choose to do and not do, when you take responsibility of what you say yes to and not, and granted, I understand saying no could be hard to do, but understand, like, when you're constantly saying yes to everyone else, you're essentially saying no to yourself, right? And doing that, it's not like self-love. You're not taking care of yourself when you do that. So we said, 1, identify the cage. 2, we said take responsibility. 3, practice awareness. Observe your thoughts without thinking observe your thoughts without believing them, right? A lot of people, you don't want to be still, or you don't want to like be with your thoughts. A lot of people struggle with being with their thoughts because it feels negative. It feels really hard. So you know what they do? Distract, distract, distract. Sometimes you don't even realize that you're distracting. If you start working on practicing self-awareness, observing your thoughts, you'll be able to actually reframe them and change what they're saying, right? I can't pass this test. Actually, I can pass this test because I'm going to start studying, right? I'm going to reframe that. And then what's going to happen is my mind will start to have a new narrative. If I don't change the way I'm thinking about things and what I'm saying to myself, I'm not going to give my mind a new narrative. So you give your mind a new narrative by reframing it. But how could you reframe your thoughts if you're not engaging with them? They're going to come. They're going to come from the past experiences that may mimic something in the present, right? So if you want to really work on getting out that mental cage that you're noticing is happening, you're really going to have to work on engaging in the thoughts. And sometimes you could feel sad about it. You can grieve about it, where you start to think like, I can't believe I'm talking to myself like this. When I work with people and they say certain things and it's negative and I repeat it back, they actually feel really sad. And I'll say things like, would you say that to your daughter, to your niece, and they get really emotional. So a lot of times they're not even aware that it's happening because it's not happening on a conscious level. So really be mindful of that. The next thing that we're going to think about as we are practicing awareness is meditation. I've talked about meditation different times on the podcast. And last time when we talked about it here, I said, remember that as you're meditating, there's no right or wrong way to do it. But when you think about meditation, especially if you're trying to practice awareness, it can help free you from mental blocks like anxiety, fear, uncertainty. You can sit comfortably and allow thoughts to pass through your mind without engaging in them. So, as you're listening to this or watching this, if you're somebody that struggles with being still and it feels hard, and starting feels hard, I want you to really think about your goals, especially if you struggle with a lot of fear, anxiety, and uncertainty. And let's face it, so much is happening in the world that it's easy to get consumed by the world, right? And the circumstances that are going on, that a lot of it that we can't change. And so to live your life day to day in fear, to live your life day to day with so much uncertainty is a hard way to operate in life. And so if you want to work on like practicing this awareness that I'm talking about, I really want you to think about like using meditation as a resource. And YouTube has plenty of meditations. And if you've never done it before, you can even just start with like a 2-minute breathing circle meditation. I'm going to pull one up really quick just so you can have an idea. So I'm going to type in breathing circle 2 minutes. We're not going to do the full 2 minutes, but I do want you to understand what it. So let me change this and share screen. All right, so we're going. So if you see this breathing circle, this is a great way to just breathe in and breathe out. And if you go on YouTube and type in breathing circle for 2 minutes, this is a great way to start with just learning how to be still. Stop sharing. A great way to learn how to just work on being still, because it can be it could be draining going on. And when you get ready for bed, you're wondering why you can't sleep. It's because your mind is looking for answers, right? It's just going. Donald says, don't be consumed by the world and don't let the world consume you. Yes, so important. And when you think about society, it's so chaotic. And when I talk about being intentional, the reason why it's powerful and important to be intentional is because if you choose not to be intentional about what you're exposing your mind to, that means you're choosing for society to lead your mind. And do you really want society to lead your mind? I don't, right? If you do, then continue to go with that choice. But 10 times out of 10, people will say no, they don't want to be consumed by the world. The next step is conquering your emotions. While you can't eliminate negative emotions, even though I don't like saying negative, I know sometimes you look at some of those hard ones as negative, right? You can't eliminate those emotions entirely, but you can minimize how they have an effect on you. A lot of times we are so consumed by our emotions and it feels impossible to work on change. One way to work on that is grabbing yourself a feelings wheel. This is a feelings wheel from an organization called Beam, really great organization. But if you Google feelings wheel, that way you can start working on naming what you are going through. It's hard to conquer something if you can't even identify what it is that you're feeling. And a lot of times, especially kids too, let me just pull up this kids emotion chart. I did it last week, but I want to help parents so they can feel like they have the tools to work with their kids too. This is another example on feelings wheel, being able to equip kids with the knowledge of what they're feeling is powerful. We are adults and we don't even understand our feelings sometimes. So of course the kids are going to be struggling too, right? And so if you can work on conquering your emotions so they're not controlling you, right? Because we allow our emotions to control us. If you can work on doing that, life starts to look differently because you're not going to be so consumed by it. Two more things. Expand your horizons. This is something that can be really challenging and hard, and I understand, but trying new things are uncomfortable at first. Eventually it becomes easier. I'm like the queen of this specific thing. When I tell you I wanted to get a state job, they didn't hire me, but I wanted to get a state job and call myself retiring. And when life started to take a different direction and I realized I wasn't equipped to be in spaces where I'm an advocator, that people don't want that when you're in high positions. They just want you to be yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. I started this practice and then I started this podcast and I published 2 books. Now I'm starting a group practice. Literally all those things I just named, even though people just see the finished product or see it being come out, you just see that part. You don't see the other parts, this part right here. The learning zone and the challenges, right? Like, because I continue to challenge myself, right? I start to gain confidence. And some of the things that I've started, I've changed, or some of the things that I've tried on this journey, this entrepreneurship journey didn't work out. I went back to the drawing board. I learned from that experience. Right. So a lot of times you struggle with trying new things because maybe when you tried something years ago, it didn't work out, and your thought, because that's what happened. Your thoughts would be like, "Oh, Celeste, you really think you could do that? You really think you could be a therapist? You really think you can host a podcast?" You know what I mean? Let's say that like you start a podcast. When I first started coming on video years ago, when there was a platform called Periscope, there are people in here that had been following me since those days. I used to come on 5 days a week and talk about a subject like I'm doing now, and then ways to deal with it, right? I used to do that. I said, okay, my goal is I want to help people work on healing. Like therapy is not cheap, it's expensive. Some of the tools that can help is not easy to get to. And no one, like when I first started, it wasn't like people came into my lives. But I was like, okay, it's cool. I'm gonna be consistent. Little by little, people started coming in, boom, 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 to the point where it was like normal. People was looking forward to this 12 o'clock, 5 days a week, literally. And then Fridays, I would allow people to ask questions. It was a free flowing thing, right? I was able to build that, but when I was starting, before I pressed play or record or whatever on the video, my stomach would drop. It would be scary, right? If I said, oh, well, nobody came on day one. If I said nobody came on day one, oh, and then the thoughts go in like, do you think you could do this? And if I don't challenge that thought and be like, yeah, I could do this, like, I just got to keep going. If you build it, they will come, right? I'm literally answering those negative thoughts. That's literally what you have to do. But again, you're not taught. Sometimes you don't even realize other people are in the same cycle. You think you're alone, right? And then you start to see other people doing stuff, not realizing that they're having the same experiences that you're having. The difference is that we're challenging those thoughts. I'm not allowing it to be a system that just has free reign in my mind. I'm not allowing thoughts to just flow. I'm definitely like engaging in them. I have the same negative thoughts you have, but I don't allow it to have dominion in my life, right? That's the difference. Like, we really have to work on not allowing those negative thoughts to have dominion in our life. So expanding your horizons. The last thing is breaking through limiting belief. So, these are some common statements that I hear people say, well, I'm too lazy to do that, or it's not possible. I also hear people saying, well, I'm just not a consistent person. Okay, you're claiming not being consistent. You're claiming that you're too lazy. You're claiming that it's impossible. Guess what your mind is doing? Your mind is going at what you're telling it. You're telling your mind you're lazy. You're telling your mind it's not possible. Your mind's not going to help you look for the possibilities, right? The podcast, I started this podcast in 2018. When people were like, everybody has a podcast. Do you really want to do that? When I opened my practice, do you really want to do that? You got this like salary job with benefits. Do you really want to do that? And so I could have let those thoughts from people or, infiltrate my spirit and then not have done it, right? I would have never known the possibilities. And so as you're thinking about these limiting beliefs, you have to acknowledge that you're having them and you have to actually work on reframing them. If you don't reframe them, what's going to happen? Your mind is doing what it's designed to do. It's designed to go at the direction that you're taking it. So I'm too lazy. So I'm going to show ways that I can continue being lazy. If it's like, I'm not lazy, I'm powerful, I can do all things, and if we start naming it that way, my mind's going to start to show me the ways that I can make things happen. Someone says, wow, I came in right on time. I struggle really bad with self-sabotage and feel like I'm on a hamster wheel daily. Yeah, like literally in a cage daily. And like Sophia said earlier, a lot of times you don't even realize it's you holding yourself back because your mind will show you other ways that it's holding back. Yes, you need to speak positive to yourself always. There's power in the tongue. Yes, so important. So sometimes when you're saying things and you may not realize the way you're saying it, your mind is listening. Your mind is literally listening to everything. I seen a Five Guys shirt on somebody, and all of a sudden I wanted a burger. In that moment, I knew that my craving for the burger came from what I saw. So if my mind is that powerful, where something as simple as an advertisement on somebody's shirt can make me crave a burger, imagine what else can happen when we're watching these things, when we're scrolling on social media. Remember, a society, especially if you live in America, it wants you to spend money. It wants you to feel like you're not enough, right? I found out that the TikTok in China and America looks different. The stuff that they allow that we see here, they don't see there, right? Because they understand the power of the mind. And so we don't understand that we can actually work on changing the way our mind is operating by changing what we expose it to. It's not just people in our lives, because a lot of times we say, oh, like who's in your tribe? And that's a big thing. People are a big factor, but also it's what we are using with our time. How are we utilizing our time? A lot of us are just like in a fog, right? We go to work, we go through the motions, right? We're surviving, right? Most people are just surviving life. A lot of people aren't living life. But in order to work on living life, you actually have to engage in something, teach yourself something new. I know a lot about mental health. If somebody asks me to speak, like these things that I do here on Wednesdays, like 10 minutes before, I'll like just jot stuff down and create these slides. Like this is nothing for me. I know this stuff like the back of my hand. Just because I know it doesn't mean I don't still allow it to infiltrate my spirit. I'm still listening to positive motivational videos. I'm still reading, right? I'm still learning. I know a lot, but I'll never stop learning because I understand the society that I'm in. If I stop learning just because I know this stuff, I can easily stop practicing it, regardless of what you know. There's a lot of people that know a lot of things. They're very smart, but they make very poor choices, right? So it's not about the knowledge that I have that keeps me at a space of feeling peace. It's literally the way that I engage in life. I needed this today. Yeah, you're welcome, Crystal. It's nice seeing you. So I hope this was helpful. I hope this makes sense. Answer, challenge, negative thoughts. That's something to put into practice. Yes. Yes, Christy. Answer the thought, challenge it. I always tell people our mind is just looking for answers. It's literally, I don't want to minimize it to be like, oh, it's just looking for answers, but I really try to make things very simple and easily digestible so that it doesn't feel complicated. People are always selling things around wellness, And it feels like, oh, well, I got to get that in order to like start this process. When I buy Celeste's journal, you could buy my journal, but I'm using my journal as an example, right? If I buy Celeste's journal, then I'm going to be able to do X, Y, and Z. The journal is just one tool that I have that you can use. It's more than just the journal, right? It's the daily practicing of it, right? And so if we can work on practicing, like, what are we thinking, and challenging those thoughts because they're not real, that's important. Constant practice daily. Yes. So yes, trailblazing mom. So constant practice daily, right? So if you can, the same way you're hungry and you go to the refrigerator, this is the last thing I'll say. You're hungry, you go to the refrigerator because your stomach is hungry. Guess what's happening? Most of our spirits are hungry. Our spirits are wanting more. They don't want this junk. They don't want this crap. When you eat crap, don't you feel like crap when you eat crap sometimes? Don't get me wrong. Like, I have a really healthy way of eating, but sometimes, I want that burger. I just told y'all, I see the burger advertisement. I want the burger. I want the cake and I enjoy it. But also I feel it. I could feel it. I could feel the heaviness. Literally, we are consuming so much of society. We're consuming so much negative content. Of course, our spirit is starving, right? And so we got to give it a new narrative. So give your mind a new narrative. If you want to break free from that cage that you're feeling and experiencing, give your mind a new narrative. So thank you so much. If you're not following me, follow me. I'm on all social media platforms. If you enjoyed this, share it with somebody that you love. If you want to learn more about me, you can go to celestetherapist.com. If you want to learn more about my group practice that I just started, I'm really excited and nervous and all of these things about, you can go to shiftingthewayouthink.com. That's shiftingthewayouthink.com. Until next time, beautiful people, I will talk to you.
But talk about your pain, can't appreciate the sun without acknowledging it rains, right? That's right. So this a moment of clarity. Be clear. And make sure you always protect your energy. You stay focused and your life gon' be lit. And you are now rocking with Celeste.